as part of our Work Smarter webinar series. And today we're going to be discussing bringing together your two most vital business missions. Joining me today are my colleagues Kathleen Boulden, the Vice President of Digital Marketing at PrismWorks, and Scott Davis, the Head of Business and Marketing Analytics at Deutsche Telekom. We're going to start by addressing, our goals of alignment. First, our top-line benefits of aligning your sales and marketing functions includes capturing more leads, addressing the needs of your prospects more effectively, closing more deals with greater efficiency, and of course, reducing your cost per lead. Essentially, the same thing as increasing your bottom line. So, in terms of our goals in this process of bringing these two units together. First, pulling prospects through the sales funnel, essentially leveraging emails and the content that is produced by marketing to educate, build credibility, and pull your prospects to the next step in the decision-making process. Setting up alerts to address sales readiness. So essentially, prospects interact with your brand. When they do that via click-throughs on your website or emails or downloading a white paper or whatever it might be, we can score that. And we're going to address lead scoring in just a little bit here. Essentially, when they reach that threshold, the trigger is hit, and it hits the appropriate people, whether it's marketing or sales, and that triggers the next step in the process. Consistent, cohesive messaging, essentially staying in front of your prospect and delivering a message that is appropriate for their stage in the buying cycle. This is absolutely critical, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how the roles of us as professionals have changed in response to buyer tendencies and self-education. We're going to discuss recycling leads that are not sales ready and sustainable marketing practices, essentially making the most of every dollar spent to attract new leads. And of course, the biggest goal of all is closing more business. We're going to kind of break this down into internal and external forces that might be the cause of the disconnect. And for your own organization, it may be one or several of these, a combination of all of them. Internally, we're dealing with issues related to technology, whether we've got a CRM or ERP system on the sales side, a marketing automation, maybe even web data analytics software on the marketing side, and those two not talking to each other is certainly going to cause issues with communication. I'll jump down to the issue of communication, and what we're talking about there is not only those automatic processes that take place between software, but also an ongoing dialogue between the appropriate parties on both the sales and marketing side, which then helps us develop our process, our methodology, make sure that we've got the same goals in mind, but that we've also got a process in place that that we're both working towards each step of the way. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the mentality and personalities, and this is something that we're going to go into more detail in an upcoming webinar. Some of the external things that you'll deal with that cause disconnect includes long sales cycles typical for our B2B clients, many touch points in the process, and not knowing where a prospect is in their buying cycle, or not capitalizing when they reach sales readiness. So let's jump into evolving behaviors over time. And our buyers have certainly changed from the standpoint that with all of the amazing amounts of information that's available out there on the internet, buyers have very much become self-educators. They want to seek out additional information about a company. It might be from information that the company has maybe emailed to them or is available on their websites, articles, blog posts, whatever it might be. But then you've got third parties that create reviews and just the general chatter on in social media circles. And these all very much influence the buying decision. And the salesperson is not necessarily the first point of contact. In fact, that might be the case on most occasions. And when you look at their, the buyer's ability to how they want to participate or interact with your organization, they might first choose to, go to an article, a white paper, read your emails, participate in social media, or at least watch what you're doing in social media. Hit a customer support person up via chat online, and perhaps the last step in their process is to actually pick up the phone. And because of the way that our buyers have evolved, that's really very much been a catalyst for our evolving professional roles. And when we look at trends from the past, marketing played very much a brand development role, generating interest through outbound marketing, which included the traditional channels of advertising, radio, TV, and direct mail. And sales was, typically a main educator and a conduit of information and the first point of contact. Nowadays, however, marketing serves as the primary educator and really the first point of contact. And they're tasked with producing the information that is applicable to each stage of the sales process. Sales, on the other hand, is really, an evaluator of needs based on where a prospect is in their buying cycle. And, a salesperson will need to make a quick determination of where they are at once, that lead has fallen into their hands, whether it's answering a phone call or, receiving some kind of alert of sales readiness. We're going to discuss how a salesperson might actually be able to pick up the ball at that point and run with it. So at this point in my presentation, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Kathleen Boulden, who's the Vice President of Digital Marketing at PrismWorks. First, I believe we're going to discuss the different roles played by marketing and sales to help provide some insight on why we don't always see eye to eye.
I'd like to mention that I believe the disconnect between marketing and sales lies within the current operational structure within most organizations that can foster a divided mentality between the two teams. Marketing is primarily tasked and evaluated based on their success in promoting consistent branding and messaging across all corporate communications. And marketers need to provide relevant content to the correct prospect at the most appropriate time while generating new leads and increasing brand awareness, which is not always an easy task given the amount of communication required and the typical disparate technologies that may be available to them, to facilitate this process. So they must also consistently build relationships and brand credibility throughout the buying cycle, while educating buyers through various methods such as subject matter expertise, positioning, white paper downloads, webinars, trade shows, PR, social media, etc. So meanwhile, sales has the intense pressure of closing deals based on leads generated through their own efforts or those leads generated from marketing efforts. And a common scenario I think that impacts sales for marketing efforts is that in some cases all leads, or most leads, may be sent directly to sales rather than when the sales are deemed sales ready. By that I mean that it's not the number of leads that are generated, but the quality and, more importantly, the position of the lead within the buying cycle that should determine when a lead is sent to the sales team. And I'll let Scott elaborate more on this dynamic during his segment of the presentation. So sales also has the challenge of communicating to their prospects, just as marketing does, and the coordination of these communications between the two teams is critical in regard to timing so that there's not an overlap or a disconnect in the communication. And consistency is really key in this process. So moving on to challenges, I think the challenge here is how to align all communications and processes and monitor them so that the prospect does not receive conflictages, and we've listed here some internal and external challenges. So defining common goals between marketing and sales can be difficult, as I mentioned, due to conflicting operational requirements and goals. And these could be required by management or executive teams and even board of directors and investors. So does the technology that is available help to streamline communication? to prospects, or is it cumbersome and facilitates disconnects? One example of this, I think, is if marketing may set up a suite of templates and communication for the sales team that's branded, content specific, and they're all excited and think this will help the sales team communicate with their prospects. But the technology they have in place is really just one step up from Outlook. It doesn't genuinely automate or control communication in an effective manner or provide the sales team with the flexibility and visibility they need into the prospect's digital behavior and stage within the buying life cycle. So moving on to accountability, this is a big challenge as the sales team is always accountable for revenue generation, but the lines are a bit blurred for marketing. I've attended many end of the quarter meetings where salespeople are put on the hot seat to meet their numbers, and sometimes with little support. And so where does marketing fit in at this stage needs to be addressed. But the bottom line is that if the sales funnel is managed and automated appropriately, then the entire buying process is more effective and the teams are more closely aligned. And given the amount of communication channels currently available, it can be difficult for marketers to clearly define the most appropriate communication channel to use to get their message received and digested by their prospects. And it's also difficult to manage long sales cycles with many touch points. So what are our solutions? Goal alignment is clearly a critical success factor, and this means not only aligning sales and marketing goals, but also getting buy-in from both teams regarding which technologies to use to support achieving these goals. If there's a lack of technology alignment and adoption from either side, this can greatly impact your success. And support from management and executive teams definitely helps with this effort as well. Lead scoring, critical success factor as well, and it requires more detailed discussion, but the concept here is that by defining your ideal prospect profiles and having clear visibility into their digital behavior, and that's visibility by both marketing and sales, your organization can be more effective in not only producing more qualified leads, but also generating more revenue. So I could go into more detail on lead scoring, but at a basic level, I call it a combination of implicit and explicit criteria. So implicit meaning demographic details like a target company name, title, role. And explicit criteria is where you define the prospect's digital behavior and determine which behaviors have more value. And the combination of those scores will determine your most qualified lead based on a predefined threshold. So again, if there's any questions about that, we can go into that in more detail. Didn't want to go on too long, but I did want to mention that scalable technology solutions I have found in many cases have been very helpful to facilitate these types of processes and automate what you need to do. And they can, with upfront planning and the ability to prepare automated campaigns in advance, you can really save significant time and reduce the amount of resources and the effort for campaigns. So thank you.
Yeah.
And if
well, Kathleen, I was going to mention.
Did you have any questions?
I have a quick question here. First of all, do you have any examples of how these technologies might be applied for maybe small business versus a larger organization?
Yes, I think that there's certainly various technologies out there that can support these types of things. For a smaller organization, I would say, just make sure that, keep it simple. You don't need to, boil the ocean, so to speak. You can start out with one or two profiles that may be based on a product launch, but the automation, from my perspective, is really the key for a small organization. You don't have to get a lot of people involved. You just need to make sure you plan up front and create your campaign. And then once you have that planned and in process, you're good to go. For a large organization, of course, it gets a little bit more complex. But again, keep things aligned with your sales team. Keep your sales team engaged. That I found has been really key because in the past, in some cases, with very, very large organizations, the sales team is certainly focused on revenue and numbers and that type of thing. So if you can provide them with some, again, automated or templated type information that kind of helps to, to build out things. And lead scoring, again, lead scoring is significant in that process as well.
Absolutely. And we're going to go into the lead scoring a little bit more with Scott here as well. So on that note, Scott Davis is the head of business development and marketing analytics at Deutsche Telekom. But he's also formerly the head of marketing operations at Box, which is a popular content sharing software platform. And that company, just to give you some idea, is valued at over $1 billion as we speak here. And I brought Scott in on this call here to provide more of an analytic and operational perspective. And Scott, I believe, is going to start by addressing issues that create misalignment. How are you, Scott?
All right. Thank you very much. That's right. So I have a lot of experience in marketing operations and even sales operations as well. And I'd kind of like to share my perspective on aligning those two organizations with you. As we mentioned at Box, very high volume. They had a free offering as well as a business web trial that was limited. You had to put your credit card down, and it was for only 2 weeks. But because of that free offering, they would actually see 35,000 inquiries a week, so very high volume. So as I was saying, 35,000 leads a week. Even if you did pass all of those to sales, you're gonna be wasting a lot of their time with leads that just are never really going to buy something. And if you were too restrictive in managing that funnel and not passing enough leads, only trying to pass the highest quality leads, you could run into a situation where sales is essentially starving. They're not able to meet their quota based upon what marketing is passing. So certainly that can cause a clash between the two organizations. Also, kind of from the other side of the table, the sales cycle, certainly in the B2B space, can be 30 days or more. And so that presents an issue for marketing. They're trying to run campaigns and fill the funnel, and they don't want to essentially wait 30 days to find out that their latest campaign was a success or a failure. So those two kind of combine to create this rift between sales and marketing, if you will. Marketing is going to tend to focus more on that machinery and filling the funnel, and sales is going to just focus more on the day-to-day, trying to close the deals. So the question is, how do we get them on the same page? And so on slide 11, we one of the easiest places to start is to track all of your marketing activities, both inbound and outbound. And it doesn't even have to be a marketing activity. If you have some kind of business development partnership, you can track those activities as well. So really, any kind of inbound or outbound activity that your organization is doing, implement some tracking. And then what you want to do is carry that tracking all the way through. So if they come from a Google search, you want to record that information when they come in the door, and then pass it through your marketing automation system, pass it into your CRM or Salesforce. And what that allows you to do is for each one of those activities that you set up and track, you can actually report the full pipeline metrics for that particular activity. So essentially, how many inquiries do we have coming in the door? How many of those are converting to leads for sales to start working? How many of those become opportunities? What is the pipeline revenue? And then how many actually close and become deals and actual revenue for your company? So really what we're trying to do here is establish a common reporting methodology that both sales and marketing can look at and make informed decisions together as a team. For example, let's say you have some activity that is it's converting really well. You're seeing a lot of inquiries convert all the way through to deals. Maybe marketing just needs to figure out how to scale that channel up and just work on kind of top of funnel for that activity. Maybe a different marketing activity. Let's say you bought a list, and I like to make fun of list buys sometimes, but maybe they're not converting as well. So, what is the issue there? Do we need to change the messaging? Is sales following up when a lead from a list raises their hand? But you can start to look at, where in the funnel are the issues occurring and what can we do to make improvement. Another technique that I would like to mention, it became very popular at Box for our campaign managers, was, once you have this tracking in place, you can start to develop some, historical trends. For example, I mentioned they had the free users, and they didn't convert very well. We also had those business web trials. They would convert, but because we were asking for their credit card, they would often fill out the first form and then abandon. So we also had some abandoners, and we would put them into an email nurture program. So what we noticed is over time, a certain percentage of each of those would convert, and you could actually calculate the value of the free user or the value of an abandoner. And even somebody that engages in the trial, not all of those would convert. So we were able to figure out, a trial is worth, say, $100, an abandoner is worth maybe $10, and a free user, well, they really don't convert very often, so they're not worth very much, maybe like 10 cents or even less. So then what you can do is when you run your new campaign, you can look at, even on the first day, how many trials are we getting, how many abandoners are we getting, how many free users are we getting, and compare that to the cost of the campaign, and actually start to make some changes and optimize that campaign right away, and you don't have to wait for the full 30-day sales cycle. So that's an interesting technique that also comes out of this kind of tracking and reporting. Now, what I've kind of outlined is very much the first touch point, if you will. There is a whole, let's say, genre of marketing analytics that talks about marketing attribution and tracking multiple touch points. We don't have a lot of time to go into all of that right now, but I would like to mention that can also lead to some friction between sales and marketing. Often you weight the different touch points differently, and sales touch is often very important, but also getting the leads in the door is important as well. So you have to just a note of caution with marketing attribution. So a couple other things I'd like to talk about, because they do come up, and often marketing and sales has a difference of opinion. I mentioned that Box has a 2-week trial for their business product. Often I'm asked, well, should we do 30 days? Should we do 2 weeks? What's the right length? And I think it does depend on your business. Often marketing wants to keep it shorter or longer, depending on how fast they want to move them through the funnel. Sales wants to engage with them, so they often want it shorter to kind of help get them on the phone. An interesting technique we did at Box is we said, okay, we're going to keep it kind of short. We're going to do it 2 weeks. But if you engage with a sales rep, they have the ability to extend your trial. And I think that's an interesting solution. It kind of balances the needs of marketing and the needs of sales. So that's an interesting consideration. Another hot topic is really landing page optimization. I think a lot of marketers often optimize for the number of leads. They want that landing page to just generate lots of leads. And I think that's a little narrow-minded. You need to look at kind of the whole organization, and you should really try to optimize your landing pages to provide quality leads to sales. I'd much rather pass 10 really good leads than 20 bad leads. So often they play around with the content and the call to action on the landing page, and they really need to kind of think more holistically about providing a quality lead to sales. And there's a few other topics, engagement timing, lead scoring, and even the nurture programs. I think it can be a trap for marketers to want to just generate more and more leads, throw them over the wall to sales. And but in all of those tools, they're very valuable techniques for marketing to use, but at the same time, we really have to come back to that common reporting framework and evaluate these kinds of programs based upon, the quality of the lead that we're passing to sales, not just the pure quantity. So that's kind of my take. I went just a couple of minutes over, but I hopefully there was some kind of operational insight in there as well.
So, a couple of things here. First, I wanted to get a sense of how you felt that some of the things that you discussed here in terms of looking at analytics, making some decisions on what you felt the value of a given prospect was. How scalable do you feel that is based on the size of an organization? You have the benefit of numbers at Box. What about a small business? Just as applicable, do you feel?
I do think it's just as applicable. You have to, you have to have a few months of data to do the analysis. But once you have that, even if your volume is less, you can certainly do it. I think actually what happens is if you have a bigger organization, you can start to come up with that rule of thumb across the different channels. So, maybe a Google search, the abandoner is worth $10, but if they came in from that list buy or something like that, you'll find that the numbers may be less for that channel. So I think the scale just gives you more granularity. Being too small doesn't prevent you from doing the analysis.
Mm-hmm. I think marketers and salespeople get overly focused on inbound, but it's essential to realize that they have just as much of an impact on the bottom line in terms of what they can save and how efficiently they can use their budgets. So I think it's an excellent point. Now, Scott, both you and Kathleen, I'd like to pose a question to you that has been asked of us by one of the participants here today. Andrew has asked, he wonders if you see that marketing ends when a customer enters the sales pipeline. And he goes on to say that as a business analyst and also acting as a sales support engineer, he's seen that that's essentially where marketing has had the greatest effect on revenue generation, essentially upselling on new products and services. What's your take on that, Scott?
I think there's a very good point there, and that's something that at Box we really tried to kind of overcome. That it's not just throw the lead over the wall to sales and forget about it. Certainly, sales is, at least in that case, sales had the preference of like, okay, I'm working the lead. We need to turn off the automated emails, okay, and that's understandable. But I still think, it's still valuable for marketing to kind of track the engagement that sales is having with that lead, and hopefully you can record that back into whatever marketing automation system you're using. And then, let's say the lead doesn't pan out, doesn't become a closed deal. We would actually take those and put them back into a nurture program for closed loss deals, and we would continue to nurture them. And it wasn't the most successful program at Box, but it did actually over time. They would sometimes come back and actually become another opportunity and actually close some revenue.
Yeah. And I guess just to piggyback off of that, I would say that lead recycling process, again, goes back to, sustainability. And, you've already spent money on procuring a lead, so, why not put them back into some sort of automated campaign? Your list will have this quality of cleansing itself in terms of whether or not somebody wants to receive information. It's also, plausible that they're not the right points of contact. And there will be, at some point you do want to take a look at your list and make some determination of, if you sent 14 or 20 emails to somebody and they haven't opened or clicked on a single one of it, I think it's certainly time to reconsider sending anything additional. And that's going to have some impact on your email deliverability as well. Kathleen, did you want to weigh in on that question as well?
Absolutely, yeah, and I totally agree with your point and Scott's point about the lead nurturing and recycling leads. That's really important. But also, I think that it depends. The approach, I wouldn't recommend ever removing marketing. I get to Scott's point that sales is going to be picking up on the lead, but I think it also depends on the sales cycle. Some of the organizations that I've worked for actually had sales cycles that lasted 2 or 3 years because there were these huge multi-million-dollar projects. And there was also a cross-sell across multiple, business units. So, you have to be cognizant of the fact that there are folks that require this multi-layer of communication and nurturing programs over time. And again, if they're not responding, it's perfect to just either take them out of the loop or put them into kind of a nurturing program. But again, I think it depends on the sales cycle and what you're doing. If it's sales cycles 10 days or something they can buy online, that changes it a little bit. So that's just my input.
Yeah. Well, and I think just as a final thought there, that is a very traditional mindset that we throw it over the fence to sales and hope for the best. And ultimately, I mean, that is one of those internal issues that we really need to fight as marketing and sales people, because we know that unless we're constantly communicating with one another, again, that's one of those really key issues, the communication aspect of this. We're not going to be making the best use of our time in terms of understanding what exactly the prospect needs or maybe why something fell off. So we've generated a lead. They've clicked through our emails. They've opened our web page. They've downloaded our white papers, and we pop it over to sales, and it doesn't turn into a deal. And so we've got to ask the question, well, why is that? And let's build a strategy and a process around dealing with those objections. So great question, and definitely appreciate everyone's participation here today. We've done a good job keeping this pretty brief. This presentation will be available, both audio as well as the slides here. So if you'd like a copy of that, please just send me an email, and I am going to send one to anybody who had registered with us. One way or the other, I very much appreciate everyone's participation here, including Kathleen and Scott. We are going to, like I said, turn this into a series and look forward to seeing you again. So thanks again for your participation, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.